I'd like to formally introduce Jessica, who many of you met last week. She has been committed to sustainability for over 20 years. She strives personally to live a regenerative life in every way that she can. One of her many efforts in this direction is her recent certification as an Arizona Master Naturalist. This is a volunteer program focused on conservation, citizen science, and education. She's been with the community gardens, if I'm getting it right, for about 7 years, working as garden technician at first, gardens manager, administrator, and now full-time garden educator for their Kids in Gardens program. She's a strong advocate for environmental and social justice together, and she completed a 16-hour training in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusiveness through the North American Association of Environmental Education. I think, like all of us, she treasures our Sonoran Desert home, and she wants the community to think about how we can live in harmony with nature. Her purpose as an ambassador for sustainability is to create a more sustainable community, to light a fire in others, to care for each other and for the planet. Jessica, we are very happy to be with you today.
Thank you, Stuart. That was a lovely introduction. I'm really excited to be here today, and thank you all for coming. I'm also really excited to hear that some of your talks are on things that I'm really passionate about. Food waste is a huge one for me. Sustainable and traditional agriculture is also something I'm very interested in. So I might have to attend next week to hear some of those talks. And I'm also available if any of you want to have a conversation with me about those things. So I'm not an expert on food resilience, as much as I continually try to educate myself about it. I've lived here my whole life for 40 years and have had daily interactions with gardens and the Sonoran Desert. My expertise is really more in the natural and cultural history of the Sonoran Desert and education and inspiring people to care about nature and their surroundings and the environment, especially youth. That's who I usually work with. So I'm excited to be here with you today. What I do know about food and farming is really summed up in a great quote by a man named Stephen Ritz in a book he wrote called The Power of the Plant. And he works with inner city kids in the Bronx in school gardens and helps them to see how gardening can be a lifestyle for them and something they can have a job in and how it's connected to everything. So here's his quote that I think is really kind of leads how I feel about food resilience and our food systems. If you want to fix healthcare, look at food and farming. If you want to fix hunger and poverty, look at food and farming. If you want to reduce waste, look at food and farming. If you want to reduce respond to climate change and make resource allocation more equitable, look at food and farming. If you want to have children involved in hands-on learning activities that engage them at school, look at food and farming. And so the main idea is that our food systems impact every aspect of our lives, and how climate change, how we're reacting with the environment. So food can be a powerful tool for health and happiness, or a powerful weapon for degradation and disease. In the past, I've given this talk with slides and presentation, but our food systems have changed quite a lot, even from the 2 years ago that I gave the presentation to the first Sustainable Ambassadors. And so, just researching kind of made my head spin a little bit. So I thought, since you all have access to the internet and lots of information, that it might be better for us all to have a conversation about this. And I'll definitely be providing some resources and information on it. But I think, you all can go out and find all the information you need on this. So let's kind of have a coming together. And instead, I'm going to quote the naturalist John Young. I hope today won't feel so much like learning something new as remembering something old. So, and with that, and as a representative community garden, our local Tucson area, I have to read our land acknowledgement because I think it's really important to acknowledge and honor the original homelands of all Indigenous people upon which our many communities in Arizona have been established. We recognize they have stewarded this land since time immemorial. We remember their connection to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to live, work, learn, and gather on their traditional homeland. We actively seek to build relationships with Indigenous communities to learn more about this place. We recognize the historical injustices perpetrated on Indigenous people and that colonialism is still an ongoing process and are mindful of our own participation. We honor and celebrate the cultures and contributions of the Indigenous peoples of the Tucson Basin. Okay, so we're gonna do a Jamboard. I don't know if any of you have experience with this. It's kind of like what we did last week, hopefully a little easier though. So I did put a link in the chat. I can link it again too, but it's just a couple chats up. So if you want to click on that and open it up, there's a question on the first page. And I think I'll share my screen for that so you can all see what I have going on. If you're not comfortable using this, you can always write your answer in the chat and I can try and paste it over. Or maybe somebody would be willing to help me do that. Okay.
I'm not seeing the link for some reason.
Yeah, me neither.
I will repost. Me either. All right, here, I'm reposting it again. In the chat, you see it? Okay. Maybe it's because I posted it before everybody got into the room. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Super easy. It's not complicated like we had last week. You know, there's not a lot to do. We're both basically just gonna use this as a way to share our thoughts. We don't have to download pictures or anything like that unless you want to. And so can everybody see my screen? Yeah, okay. So you're gonna wanna use this little sticky note right here. It's the fourth one down from the top and you just click on it, you choose your sticky note and then you write in it your answer. And so what I want us to think about first is how do you feel about food? Just like right now, you know, or what's your relationship with food today? Do you feel good about it? You feel bad about it? Just take a few minutes and think about it and add a response on there.
I think we need, I have a view only designation. I think we need access as editors.
Okay, let's see. Okay, people with access. Dang it, I thought anyone with the link would be, oh, viewer, here we go. Okay, editor, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna reshare this link and hopefully that will work. Let's see, I have a
So the one at 1022 or 1020 that you put in?
I just shared it again. Hopefully that will work. Let's see if it does. I figured there'd be a few bumps right here in the beginning, but hopefully it will. Yeah.
Let's see.
Does that one work?
Let's see.
Yeah, I have the tools on the side now.
Oh, great. Okay.
So we can sticky and do all that stuff.
Okay. So everybody, you want to open up the most recent link I dropped into the chat box. And if that feels stressful to you, I don't want it to be. So you can also just put how you feel in the chat. It won't be anonymous. Or if you want to send it to me privately in the chat, instead of using the Jamboard, we can do that too. I'm just going to give everybody a few minutes to add something on there. You can write it too, but I think the sticky note is probably the easiest.
Sorry, not sure how to get the sticky note to respond. I hover over it, but
Did you click on it?
I clicked once. Okay, maybe that's it.
Are you having a hard time, Donna? You can, if you want to private message me your message, I can add it in if that feels better for you. We could also just talk about it too if we want. Okay, so do you want me to give you all a few more minutes? Or yeah, okay.
Now I wrote something and it seemed to disappear. Oh, there we go.
Did you find it?
Got it. Thanks.
So I'm sorry, where's the sticky note? I have it up now, but I don't.
So on the left side of the screen, there's a little
Yeah.
box. The pen, you're going to want to go down 4 from the top, and it's a little square with lines on it. And
Yeah.
that's the sticky note. So you should be able to click on it, and then you'll have an opportunity to write what you want to.
And magically it came up. Oh no, it just disappeared. Okay.
I hope you're not looking at my screen. I can
I
stop
think
sharing.
I'm looking at your screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Just I don't want it to be confusing until we're all ready, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm having you all do this exercise is because whether we consciously realize it or not, we all have a very intimate relationship with food, and it affects every part of our lives, including how we interact with other folks. And also our environment shapes our food choices. So it's easy for some of us who haven't faced food insecurity, you know, it might just come as a given that food is there and it's accessible and it makes us feel good. Because that's how it's supposed to be, right? So does anybody have thoughts on what they're reading on the Jamboard of other people's interactions with food? I can share my screen again if that's helpful.
It's nice to have it just since we've been writing in it. I kind of like having it just there, and then when I
Just
go
on
back,
your own screen?
yeah, then when I go back, I can see everybody else.
Okay, I will stop sharing and I will just move my little screen aside so I can read what you all are writing. Okay.
Oops.
Oh, that makes it really small. Does any of this surprise you when you read how other people are interacting with food?
Hmm.
I really relate to the mixed feelings one about food. I love food, but I have lots of mixed feelings about it. It's probably because I work in food systems, and so I do work with folks who are food insecure. And I was also, just a little background for me, and maybe to give you some insight in your own relationship with food too. I was taught to use food as comfort growing up, and so food was always available to me. So I never experienced food insecurity. But that was because my mother, who was a single mom when I was young of 2 daughters, was willing to go hungry so that her 2 daughters could have food. So I didn't realize that until I was an adult,
Wow.
you know, that she was going hungry. Yeah. And so all of us have this intimate connection with food, and, you know, our very cells are literally made of the food that we eat. So it's really important to think about that. It's important to think about how not everybody has that good feeling with food. Lots of people, it is a daily concern. How many of you have ever been hangry or know what hangry is?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's when you're hungry and you get angry, right? And everybody's pissing you off.
Oh.
You know, you can't function like you normally would. And so there's folks out there who that's their day-to-day, everyday experience with food. And so, you know, your ability to interact with others is greatly diminished. And there's also links to violent behavior and malnutrition. And so, you know, when we think about horrible things like school shootings, there's always the two sides of the debate, but maybe part of the debate should be, are those folks malnourished? You know, why do people react the way they do? We know when we are hungry, we get angry. So if there's a whole world of folks out there who are not getting enough access to food, how are they going to be living their day-to-day lives? How are they going to be interacting with folks? Are they able to care about things like we care about in the environment? Do they care about recycling? If they have to struggle every day just to meet their basic needs, they're not going to be able to think about things like that. So,
Jessica, have you read any research on that? That's such a fascinating, obvious connection I hadn't really thought about.
yeah, I have. I'll try and share that when I share resources. There was a study done on inmates, and they fed some of the inmates, you know, just kind of the regular food that they were normally eating, and then they took another group and fed them food that had higher nutrients and healthier food, and the incidences were much less in the group that had access to food. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see.
I would think it also affects crime so much. If you don't have enough money for food, you're going to have some interesting reactions.
Definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, and also, you know, thinking about children who are going to school with food insecurity, and how are they able to participate and learn. You can't be well read unless you're well fed. So, and also, this is a really interesting thing too that I just learned while I was researching this. I mean, I figured that with all the food issues that we have going on and the food prices raising, the average price of food in the United States has surged 10%, over 10% in the last 12 months, which is the most that it has increased since February of 1981, which I think is pretty, I mean, I've noticed the food prices going up a lot. So, okay.
On that topic of food hunger, I'm not rural community, Jessica, and I used to take my children to the bus stop and wait till the bus came. But there would be children there who would be eating their lunch because they'd not been fed breakfast. And I would say to them, now, what are you gonna have for lunch? Do you need some money? I mean, seriously, it was sad. I can't imagine sending my children to school without food. And all the teachers I know at the elementary school kept food, supplies, crackers, nuts, because children often were hungry. How can you study? How can you learn when your stomach's empty? So yes, personally heartbreaking.
Chris, that in Sierra Vista?
I work in the Flowing Wells School District, which is our poorest school district in Tucson, at Homer Davis Elementary. And so about 200 kids come through the garden every school year. And I give them a little, like an exit survey kind of, where they tell me, you know, how they were interacting with the garden and about their experience. And so many of them said that their favorite part about going to the garden was that they got to eat.
Oh my gosh.
So. Yeah, I'll tell you throughout our conversation today, I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the responses I got from them also. But let's go on to the next. So you want to hit the arrow up at the top and go to the next question. Hold on, I'm having some issues with my Jamboard. There we go. Okay, so the next question is, in your opinion, what do our current food systems look like?
What scale do you mean Tucson, Arizona, US, global?
It's up to you. I would say let's focus on our country for now, although we know that I mean, it's a global market. So however you want to frame your answer, I guess. I mean, I bet most of us didn't realize how much food came out of Ukraine until this current situation.
Yes, right.
I guess this will be the question that tells me whether I should have done the slides or not.
I'm sorry, I can't see this screen. Can you just say what the question is again?
Sure. The question is, what do our current food systems look like?
And Jessica, it sounds like you may want to share a screen for the benefit of Donna, then if she can't see it on her computer.
Yeah, I can do that.
Hmm.
Okay. It looks like we're all on the same page on how the current systems look.
Hmm.
I would have been concerned if somebody thought they were doing well.
Hmm.
Yes, overly processed, very much so. Mhm. I like the answer complicated and distant, because we do definitely have a food system that is obscured. We don't see most of what's going on or who it's affecting. I'm going to copy Donna's response and put it in here. Let's see. So we do actually in Tucson have a number of areas of town that are food deserts, and that means that the folks who live in those areas do not have access to healthy food within walking distance from their home. We have one of our community gardens is in one of those areas, and South Tucson also has food deserts. Have we all had a chance to share? Oh, here we go. Okay. I think, well, I'll give you another minute to read over this and then I'm going to stop sharing. But I think that this is really great and also shows me that I didn't necessarily need to go over all of the ins and outs of our food system. We all realize that it's, you know, extractive and destructive for the most part, and not using our resources well, creating environmental problems that we really are facing right now. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you all can still see your Jamboard. Okay, so
Jessica, this is very depressing, I have to say.
it is. That's also one of the reasons why I didn't want to go over the slides, because I thought they were depressing too. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and then maybe some hopeful things in there too. But it is a sad story, and it has a sad history, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that before we can make change. We have to kind of see the whole picture before we can know what not to do in the future and what we need to do differently. So obviously it can't claim to be a working system. According to UN figures, the number of severely food insecure people has doubled in the past 2 years, from 135 million pre-pandemic to 276 million today. So to me, that's not surprising, given that our country, in our country at least, big agriculture was birthed on the back of enslaved, marginalized, and disenfranchised people. Hopefully some of you got a chance to watch the Michael Twitty video that that Stuart shared. And I really, that was an eye opener for me when I started reading Michael Twitty's book. And so today, also big ag and our healthcare systems currently disproportionately impact negatively Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So it's important for us to examine these systems and how they tie into the work we do. We need to acknowledge how they're based on inequities that are pervasive in our food systems, not necessarily to place blame, but so that we can advocate for change, because that's what we are, right? And so there's two crops that really fueled that transatlantic slave trade. Does anybody want to guess at what those two crops were?
Sugar.
Well, one was definitely rice.
Sugar, rice in there, but there's two
Yeah.
big ones.
And cotton.
Someone said cotton.
Yep. So it's sugar and cotton. You got it. Those two
Wow.
are the big ones. And so these sugarcane and corn. I mean, somebody said cotton, but I actually wrote corn. Cotton is on there too. These crops are negatively impacting at a disproportionate amount the African-American descendants of the slave trade, as they face the largest numbers of diabetes and food-related health issues.
Hmm.
So you might not know, unless some of you know what the 5 C's that Arizona is known for. Cotton is one of the original and major agricultural commodities produced in Arizona. And I think it now would be a good time to talk a little bit about Arizona's agriculture, because I think it's interesting. And some, people might not know this. Arizona's citrus industry predates statehood by decades. So we have really perfect conditions for growing oranges, tangerines, lemons, grapefruit, and citrus is also one of the state's iconic 5 C's. So we have citrus, cotton, climate, cattle, and copper. Does anybody want to guess which states produce around 90% of the leafy vegetables grown in the United States?
Arizona.
Arizona.
It's kind of wild, right? When you think about it, we are always talking about our water, and here we are, the largest producers of leafy vegetables, especially in the winter, because Yuma's climate, we can grow through the winter where a lot of other places cannot. So yeah, California and Arizona are the biggest growers of leafy vegetables. So the state also has the largest pecan grove in the country and the largest date plantation in the world. Currently,
what are the 5 C's again?
the 5 C's are citrus, cotton, climate, cattle, and copper.
Did you say climate?
Yep.
Thank you.
Probably climate because we have year-round growing season here. I mean, we in the summer we wouldn't say the climate, but so this is some good news, I think. Currently, there are over 18,000 indigenous farmers and ranchers operating in Arizona, and they make up 57% of the agricultural operations in the state. They operate 20.6 million acres and produce 86.7 million in direct agricultural sales. The largest use of agricultural land is for animals, including beef cattle, sheep, goats, fish, and other animal products. Arizona ranks 10th in organic sales, which I think is pretty cool. 3rd in lemon production during the winter months. We also are the first producer for lettuce and other leafy greens. And our agriculture and agribusiness bring in more than 23.3 billion and 138,000 jobs. So I find that very interesting because we are always talking about our water, and especially I think citizens are encouraged to monitor their water use, which I think is definitely important. But given that we have these large agricultural businesses with mostly unrestricted access to water throughout our state, it gives me pause. And if anybody else has any comments on that, I'd love to hear them.
Questions?
Agriculture is the biggest water user in the state, Jessica. It is. 70-some%, right, of water goes for agriculture. So what does the little bit we do if they don't, do more? So, and right now we are working on an active management water area for the Wilcox, Cochise County, which has been totally unregulated, totally abused with pecans, cattle, corn, everything. So that's going forward. you
And
know?
if you go to the Arizona agriculture page, our governor is encouraging more folks to come and farm here. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
kind of,
and then send all the money and the profits and the products overseas. So,
yeah. I mean, lots of that is not being grown for Arizona.
no.
Did you say that 57% of the farming is done on native land?
It's done by, well, it's all native land, but it's done by indigenous farmers. That's according to the Arizona Agriculture Department.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I would not have guessed that number was so large.
So does that suggest that some of that is agro-business on owned by indigenous people?
I'm sure it is.
Do you have any sense of proportion between big ag and small or medium-sized family farms, locally owned farms in the state?
I don't, but that would be something to look into. I will make a note of that.
I think one of the things that's a real concern is how much is dominated by large corporate agriculture and not enough support being given to local and family farms.
Mm-hmm.
But
It would be helpful for me if Jessica defined what a family farm is.
yeah,
You hear that term constantly, and I think it's a term that's evolved over
Mhm.
time. So I'd certainly like to know, what do we characterize as a family farm?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a hard line to draw, because who knows if those family farms are using regenerative farming practices. The only way you can know that is if you go to your farmer's market and talk to your farmer, and even potentially visit their farm and see what they have going on. The majority of farmers that I know who garden, in the close to Tucson, are trying to do regenerative agriculture and increase their biodiversity, but there's still a fair amount of monocropping that goes on. But a lot of those folks are way more interested in the building up the soil. Most of the agriculture here isn't, it's not concerned with building the soil. It's monocultures, which are, as we probably all know, very detrimental to our soil health, and also just producing less healthy food. So it'd be good to do more of a tour of the local farms and see kind of what they've got going on. And of course,
It's my understanding that farming is not regulated at all. No.
Not the water. No, it's very unregulated in Arizona. That's why they have access to as much water usually as they want to. And that's why lots of people come here. There's also the taxes on farmers are lower here in Arizona, so there's a lot of incentive for them to come grow here. It's mind-boggling, honestly.
Yeah.
So it
But
sounds
as a
like,
gardener, I get it, because I love growing here. I have, I can grow year round, and so I understand the appeal. But yeah, it's definitely a problem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the positive things.
Jessica, just a couple of questions. You said that Arizona is 10th in organic sales. That means that by poundage or by income that we sell 10%, we're 10th in terms of how much money is made selling organic food.
Yeah, I imagine it's money, because that was the follow off of the Department of Agriculture page. It was very focused on money. So.
And then you said something about agribusiness brings in, and I just lost what that was.
Yes, it's 23.3 billion and 138,000 jobs.
So those are real great Chamber of Commerce figures. And we're all for jobs, and we're all for businesses succeeding. Is the Farm Bureau, just what role they do play or could play in thinking in terms of regenerative agriculture versus just the bottom line for this quarter or this year?
Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about what was here on this land before us. It was a lot of ruminants, right? But we had these healthy, amazing grasslands. So there is a way to have all this cattle, all these ruminants growing or being raised on this land in a way that can regenerate our soil and our ecosystem. So the potential's there.
Okay. And just a time note, 5 minutes to our break, if that's convenient for you. And
Okay. Yep, let me just talk. Oh, sorry. You want to say something, Trace?
Yeah, the cattle that the Europeans raised here had a major and negative impact on the amount of natural recharge. So the ruminants you must be talking about are occasional herds of whatever, as opposed to cattle herds.
Correct. Yeah, bison. Yeah, the native ruminants that were here beforehand, not cattle, but I feel like there's, gotta be some overlap there if we're feeding them healthy food and using their excrement to improve the soil. There's lots of regenerative farms that are able to close that loop and make their farms biodynamic. So probably not at the levels that we have cattle here, but maybe.
Probably depends on how you're raising your cattle.
For sure. Yeah, and how many antibiotics you're giving them too.
Yeah, definitely.
I know the majority of the antibiotics used in the United States are for our animals that we grow for food. So I just want to talk about organics real quick before our break, because it's kind of a positive story and I like to always add those in. I'm sure probably y'all have noticed that throughout the years, more grocery stores like Safeway and Fry's have increased their organic selection. Right? Have y'all noticed that?
Yeah.
So that's a great story. Public awareness of food quality and consumer awareness and the demand for higher food has caused this consistent growth in accessibility of organic foods. So the food market is relatively flat, and the sales for organic foods have continued to outpace previous years, which is fantastic. That means our demand for better food is changing the way the market is moving and increasing the accessibility for many of us. So demand drives the accessibility. So like we're talking about, whenever possible, of course, use your money to support those changes that you want to see. But even though those things are changing, it still means that those who need the most help oftentimes still don't have access to better options. So, the goal is to think about how we can make sure that organic food and healthy food is accessible to everybody. So yeah, that's kind of wanted to throw that in there about organic sales, because I think it's fantastic. And it's definitely a good story in this whole food system story. So we can take our break if we need to.
Well, Chris, I thought Christy maybe wanted to comment on farming regulation and things like that. So did you have something, Christy?
I did, but I can't remember what it was now.
Okay.
It'll come back to me later. I should have written it down.
Okay. So should we just take a 5-minute break now, Jessica, and then be back? So time for body kindness, jumping jacks, tree pose, whatever is good for you. Give you time.
I think so.
Maybe 11:25. Let's see how it goes.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
If everybody's back, I'm gonna direct you back to your Jamboard, and we're gonna go to the third question on there, which is, what can we do to increase our food resiliency? So go ahead and add a little sticky there with some thoughts if you have them.
Are you thinking at local, regional?
Yeah, let's keep it local for this one. Although right, keeping it local could definitely be one of the things we put on there as for our food resiliency. Oh, it looks like someone did. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So these are all great answers, and I agree with them, especially the children one. That's my favorite, my personal choice for food resiliency. Can everybody read those? Okay, so I kind of want to do a little, oh, here's some more. Okay. There's something in the chat. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Just a little, because I kind of want to speed things along here to get within that time frame. Looking at these answers are all great and things that I think most of the folks in this organization or this group that we're talking with could do and work towards. But just as a little challenge, put on your glasses of maybe someone who's insecure, and how many of these options are something that someone who's food insecure would be able to participate in. You know, we could maybe move, I don't know if that would work to move some to one side or the other.
How about gleaning?
Gleaning, yeah.
Would they be participating in that, or at least recipients, if not?
I think so. Trace, do you have a question?
Make a comment. The program that the Community Food Bank runs on teaching people how to grow food at home, I think addresses, I'm not sure how much it focuses on people who are food insecure, but it certainly makes the option, tries to make the option of growing their own food more accessible to those folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially there, because a lot of those folks might already be in the area picking up a food share, you know, because transportation oftentimes is a barrier.
Yeah. Well, and also focusing on what they can grow at home, whatever kinds of conditions, you know, space they have or garden availability they have right in their own home or neighborhood. So,
yeah,
we're trying.
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, a lot of these things are great ideas and we can definitely work on them, but you know, folks who are food insecure, they just, it's not on their mind probably. They're just trying to survive. And so, you know, the idea is, how do we bring these spaces to folks who need it? So yeah, the programs that teach food growing are great. More green space, I love that. And someone put more edible landscaping. I love that idea. You know, we have that million tree initiative. So we may, what if, except for that, we don't want to get, you know, too heavy on the water with fruit trees, but we have a lot of native trees that are edible, native plants that are edible.
And as Anne has pointed out, we also have runoff from roofs. We have gray water and we had condensate water. So there's actually sufficient water for hundreds of thousands of conventional food trees.
That's true. And I would love to see a program where we're helping folks who don't have the resources to harvest the water that falls on their landscape, helping them to do that, you know, at little to no cost for them. And also, you know, sometimes even just going to that rainwater harvesting class is prohibitive for folks who want to get a rebate for water harvesting. You know, so how do we make, if you look at the Heat Island overview, sorry, I have a ringing phone, I hope you all can't hear it, of like South Tucson compared to a lot of other places in Tucson, it's one of the hottest areas, and that's because they don't have as many green spaces and trees. And so they're not even making use as well of a lot of the rainwater. So I let's see, some more things that were added. Yes, I love the public parks with 3 produce growing. We could add in some extra shade in there too, besides just the trees. That would be helpful. It's great.
Yeah,
Well, and I think also programs that make food more accessible, food that would otherwise be thrown out, making it more accessible to people. And in some city, and I can't remember which one it was, they go into the community. So you don't have to go to the community food bank. They actually come to you and distribute food, and it becomes, more of a community thing that the people share at the same time that they're getting good food.
Right, definitely. I get compost from Trader Joe's for the community gardens, and I can't tell you how much of that food is still edible. Actually, I can tell you it's about 50 to 75%, depending on how quickly I pick up the compost. And so I will oftentimes bring that to my student classes, and we'll compost what we can and snack on what we can. So lots of food is being wasted. They do also give a lot of their food to the food bank that's gone out of code. So that's a good program also. So I want to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think there's also that aspect of like local organization. Like essentially, if I have orange trees and it's on orange harvest time, I have too many oranges for consumption, or lemons, right, for individual consumption, and then figuring out how to create clusters of people that are growing different things so they can share together for mutual, so that it's not an overload and then things go to waste. There's organizational factors.
Right. That would be
Right.
Ishita.
That would be Ishkashita.
Yeah.
Right. No, I know, but I mean, even beyond that, like if you're growing locally in a neighborhood to organize so that different families are growing different.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if I froze or, did she freeze? Okay. I like where she was going with that though. Are you there, Marta? Did we lose you? But I love the idea of getting our communities. I know Trace does a lot of this work too, but getting like the community together, resources. And there are a number of buy nothing groups. It'd be nice if those were more readily accessible for folks who don't have the internet to know that that's happening.
Right.
so are you saying, Jessica, that actually there are some resources that could be helpful to low-income groups, but they need to know about them?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That sounds like it goes on this list of more steps to take.
Yeah, I'll add it on there.
Anyway, back to gleaning real quick. Stuart, Kathleen and I talked a lot about it, but it's finding people to harvest and go where they're needed, where there's excess. And those items that are collected would usually go here, they would go to our community food banks. So that would hopefully, Jessica, reach out to people that are food insecure. Whether they could actually go help collect, that's debatable, but there is a lot of people here that have fruit trees, pomegranates and more, and just can't get to them, can't physically harvest. And yeah.
I love these ideas. That was a great brainstorming session. I'm definitely gonna be saving that Jamboard, and you all will have access to it too, Stuart, if you all Sustainable Tucson wants to use that. So I want to challenge you a little bit on a different sort of thinking. So how do we feel about fast food, everybody? Let's give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Most of us are going to say thumbs down, right? Probably because we are all very aware of the situations going on, and probably we're all not facing food insecurity. But if you were someone who is facing food insecurity, what are the chances you're going to go and buy a $2 or $3 avocado to be healthier, or you're going to go buy 3 burgers at McDonald's to feed your family? You're going to choose the option that gives you the most amount of food. 84.8 million Americans eat fast food every day. And so I think, when we're thinking about options that can help, there are a lot of, personally, I'm off the fast food train and I don't advocate anybody getting back on it, but there are a lot of folks who are eating that food. And so the idea of changing their mindset and changing their habits to eating healthier, it's a steep hill to climb. And so a lot of those fast food restaurants are offering healthy alternatives, right? And so I think that is something that in our mindset, maybe we should be thinking about, like, supporting. I definitely used to be of the mindset of, like, I'm going to tell everybody not to eat fast food. Don't go to McDonald's. Don't do that, please. But if that's the only option for someone, and those places are offering a healthier choice, that's going to impact our demand for those healthy choices at fast foods. It's going to drive the demand. Fast foods probably aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So, that's something maybe we can think about a little bit more too, is not like vilifying things that we definitely know, like, are not impacting our environment positively. But for those folks eating there, if we can get them to make a healthier food choice, it's going to be better for the environment and better for their bodies. What do you think?
There's also, just the component of, for a lot of families, if people are working 2 jobs, both parents, it's a lot of it is, how do I do something? Maybe that's the night out for the family, and the kid gets the Happy Meal and it's a treat and something exciting, and it's something that the parent can do. Food preparation, all of that takes time, and we live, and it shows how systemic it is, because if we have people who are in situations where they have to work 2 to 3 jobs and at a minimum wage, and it all ties into each other, and yet they want to do good things for their family, but that's the good thing they can do in all that calculation. Saturday night, Friday night, what can we do? What's going to make the kids happy? Well, let's go to McDonald's. So understanding that a lot of times these are actually choices people are making within their constraints, that is the best choice to hit a lot of touch points, is important to consider, right?
Yeah, and how much better would it be if those places that they're going to go that are offering those options have healthier choices they can make?
Absolutely. And it's not that it's like that their motivations are positive, even if the choice isn't ideal.
What about Chipotle as a fast food source?
I mean, I think, they're offering healthier alternatives, and that's great. It's definitely one of those, as an activist and environmental, it's a conflict for me personally. I definitely have issues around fast food, but it's kind of getting yourself out of that mindset as someone who is, food secure. I can make different choices, but not everyone else can. And so, not saying that Chipotle is bad. Enjoy your Chipotle.
Well, I was actually just wondering what defines fast food.
Well, in my mind, I'm thinking of, fast food as those places that, if you look up their ratings on, the Better World Shopper or some kind of consumer report, they're going to probably, be destructive for the environment, not treating their employees well, not really giving you a lot of actual food and more food-like products. And yeah, there are healthy choices out there, well, and then the other option or the other thing you want to think about is the waste. How much waste is being produced when you're eating there? That's for me, when I think about fast food, it's like, is it healthy? Is it producing a lot of waste? And so if we're going to places that are fast food, but they offer healthy options or maybe compostable material that they're putting their food in, those are all things that we can advocate for change within our fast food sort of businesses. But yeah, for me, fast food in my mind is like probably not real food.
I wonder if there's some way to encourage or support development of local fast food restaurants, locally owned, even possibly locally sourced, places that would locally source, so that the food is somewhat healthier, but still offers the kind of convenience of the fast food places. I mean, aside from all of the food reasons, one of the reasons that I stay away from most fast food places is I try not to eat at chains, national chains. I have too many wonderful choices of locally owned restaurants. if I'm going to eat out. But I recognize that that's my privilege. But I would really love to see growth in the local business community include fast food options. And I don't know how one pushes that, but it would be a nice way to expand our local options.
I think that's a great idea also. I don't know that it would ever be to the level of accessible that our fast food is, because it's subsidized by our government, you know, so they can make food that is they can sell food very cheaply, even though there was a ton of resources going into it. I mean, you know, when you go and get, you know, your hamburger at McDonald's, like it's not 99 cents worth of food. It's a lot of production that went into that, but because they're subsidized, you're able to pay a small amount for it.
Well, so because it's not only partially real food, it's also cheaper.
Yeah.
That's going to be.
No, if you think about it, real food has less of a, I mean, real food takes less, I won't say less money to make, but like those processed foods, that's a lot of money that's going into all those processes. It's not a small like production, you know, it's a large system that takes a lot of input and resources.
Yeah, that's good.
Well,
I think that's
And
one of
my observation is actually that fast food is no longer that cheap.
it's
I mean, I guess I think McDonald's is still probably pretty cheap. I don't shop there, so I can't honestly
think
say,
it
but
actually is more expensive than you'd realize.
really, see, I went and looked at their menu, and I do have $1 and a $2 menu before I did this, because I thought about that. I was like, is that the prices are increasing? Is it increasing over there? You know, but you can still get plenty of food off their $1 and $2 menu, and then the way that they make a lot of their money is they incentivize you to buy multiple things off of the menu. So, you know, you could get your $1 hamburger, but then they're incentivizing you to buy other stuff. So
I think that's one of the most frustrating things about fast food. It's like, even at like McDonald's, like it's so much more expensive to buy a bottle of water or anything like a healthier alternative, as opposed to like their dollar menu, where it's just, yeah, it's more of a comment of just like a frustration on how inaccessible healthier options can be at these places. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to buy like the $2 hamburger as opposed to like the $8 salad, because it just makes more sense in that way. But yeah.
well, that's good feedback, because I didn't realize that the healthy food options and I'm not sure if that's how it is across the board. I imagine it probably is, that they're more expensive. It makes sense why it's expensive, but it's good to know that it's that much more expensive.
I mean, I just want to say, well, I want to say two things. Like, number one, me personally, like the difference, how I feel energetically, like after I eat something healthy versus something that's gross, like, you know, it gives you that hit, and then you're like, bleh, like, and living your life with bleh energy is, I mean, it affects you. But the other thing I will say is this, and this is, I don't think this is probably true here, but I've had instances, because I'm Italian and food culture is so important. And what I've had experiences with people I know who've been raised in kind of American, like households with traditional American products. And the realization that they had a perspective that healthy food was not good taste-wise. And that like, and it was so interesting to me, because that as an Italian, that does not, I never, like, to me, healthy food can be freaking delicious. There's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be. But it was like, oh, if I have to eat healthy, I have to sacrifice taste. Tasty is bad for me. Healthy doesn't taste good. And I was like, no, that's not true at all. But I think there's still people who hold those two visions because they haven't maybe had the experience of like, wow, this is yummy and it feels good in my body. And that was like eye-opening to me, because I had never correlated those things.
Yeah, that's a really good perspective on that. And you're right. I agree. The standard American diet, I call it the SAD diet, definitely does not support healthy eating for the most part, which is interesting, but it's also because of the businesses that we have that are, what do you see when you turn on the TV? You know, it's not an advertisement for the community gardens. It's for McDonald's or, and also they're combining, you know, foods that wouldn't naturally go together in nature, but appeal to our taste buds. So, you know, like a pizza, you're not going to get the carbs and the fats together in nature like that. So our brains are like, oh, this is the best thing in the whole world. But it's, yeah.
Well, I think that's where the education aspect comes into it too. You know, teaching young children about healthy food and giving them healthy food. I mean, we all know people like my husband who would, as a child, would have never eaten a Brussels sprout. But when I make him Brussels sprouts, they're good enough that, I mean, Brussels sprouts is his favorite vegetable now. So I think there is a learning aspect to all of this, learning to like healthy food.
Not more.
I agree. And I do have, you know, the next questions on our slide, although we're kind of talking about this, is how do we heal ourselves and the planet? I personally, and if you want to go ahead and add your Post-its to that, you can, or we don't have very much longer, so we could just talk some more. But when I work with students, and a lot of the feedback that I get is like, kids say they didn't know they could eat vegetables raw. That's not something that they are in, you know, that is in their daily lives. And then a lot of it is like herbs and things. One kid told me he didn't realize that mint grew. He thought it was made in a factory. So I definitely think changing the youth and how they interact with food and the environment is one of the biggest ways that we're going to be able to heal. And not, you know, not to get too dark with it, but I wonder, you know, what's that time frame like? Do we have to wait till they're adults for there to be change, or can we start making these changes now? So if you want to go to the Jamboard, it's how do we heal ourselves and the planet? And I would like to say, for me, healing, and one of the reasons I like to do this talk is because I know a lot of the times the sustainable ambassadors and people who are activists in general have, oh great, thank you for putting that in the chat. That looks interesting, Stuart. Is that a lot of times we have the struggle of wanting to make a difference, but also being sort of weighed down by all of this. And so I would like to encourage you all to connect with nature, especially through the soil and seeds. Seeds are incredibly healing and just one of the most adaptable things on our planet. So, you know, just experiencing growing plants on your own from the seed to harvest can be a really healing thing, as well as sharing food. You know, how do humans celebrate anything? Basically, it's with food. So connecting with others and sharing a meal, growing food together, turning the TV off, you know, because the TV is just giving us advertisements for food and medicine to make us feel better after we eat that food, is connecting outdoors with other people and the soil.
It's so interesting when you were talking about like rosemary and mint. I was thinking about immediately, oh, the olfactory, is it olfactory? The smells, right? And like the aromatherapy, like the experience, like it's so true that like once you experience it, and that intimacy and like how it affects you almost even physiologically, right? Like the calming, the soothing, and how important that is. And I remember a little girl, I was growing carrots, which is probably not that great because you can buy them cheaply, but she came over, she was like 4, and she, you know, I was like, all right, let's go to the garden. And I was like, pull this. And she just, you know, it was like the best game she'd ever seen in her life, that this shocking, amazing thing that, oh my God. And then we could eat it. Seeing that wonder, and that is just, it changed. I'm sure that carried with her, and it was a wonderful thing to see it.
Oh, I agree. And I'll send these to you, Stuart, because I know you're going to ask for them. There's studies done that children who grow their own food are more likely to eat fruits and vegetables. And it's true. I mean, carrots don't make it out of the garden. They just munch those things right up. Same with peas. And it is magical. The kids' faces light up. And then, you know, you were talking about the herbs, and I think that's another really good way for our activist souls to heal, and also for us to connect with other people. Grow an herb garden and have your friends come over, give them some herbs to smell, and they will forever be connecting that smell with their memory, because our olfactory is connected to our memory. And then, you know, every time they smell that from forever after, they will remember that. I actually walk through the gardens often with students, especially the students that I have that I work with that live in foster homes or are very food insecure. I give them herbs to smell because it lifts their mood and it's connecting them for the rest of their lives, hopefully, with food and their experience in the garden.
And I have to say,
Well,
I've often, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think we lost you, Marta. You and
Oh, I've often thought, I mean, in my life about just open space and, you know, when we're talking about violence or emotional upset, I mean, when you've had a horrible day and you're a kid or a teenager, you know, once upon a time you could go run out into a field or into the woods and scream and yell and cry, right? And get it out. And when you think of even green rooms, right, that were you know, for like, you know, people who go on TV, like the calming and that emotional healing that can happen in nature and green spaces. And then if you're in a city and you're having a horrible day and you go out and you want to get out and you're just bumping into people and you don't have that space to then and get it out and then rejoin. And I think that role that nature plays that isn't accessible to everyone is also, you know, something critical.
I'm just going to share one more gardening story with you. A number of students I work with about 25 students that are neurodivergent, or they live in foster homes. And so they don't feel secure or safe. Oftentimes the students and the teachers come out and you can tell that it's been a bad day inside the classroom. And they just, I can't do academics with them because it's really just based on their mood. So a lot of it is therapeutic gardening. And the feedback that I got from the majority of the students that I work with at that school was that the garden made them feel safe. So, you know, it's a place for—
I just wanted to quickly mention Michael Twitty. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was so astonishing. And I just thought that it was an inspiration that you could empower people through connecting them to their food traditions. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. And if you think about it, that would be sort of one way of getting people off the fast food thing, is to really build that connection again with the food traditions.
Yeah, he wrote a book that's really good. You should check out his book. My mind is blanking on it, but you could just search him and his book will come up. It's a fantastic book. It's very hard to read at times, but fantastic. I'd like to ask you all too, I saw you filled out the How to Heal Ourselves and the Planet, and that, thank you for that. Let's see, there's one more, actually there's one more that's, if you want to come up with an action item for yourself on how you're going to, okay, there's a typo there, become more food resilient. It'd be great to share that. I'd like to know if you all have thoughts on things that you can do or actions you can take. Sometimes it's hard to bring that food resiliency out of your private life. Like, as far as for me, I'm very food resilient within my own life, but how do I bring that out to the larger community? But it can be within your own life too. Like if you want to learn to garden or do some composting, that is also a great step.
And what's our charge, Stuart?
To make a list in some logical order of what would be the body of your presentation. If you were going to present this conversation, obviously not the same way, it'll always be different, but if you were to present the content of this conversation to some group, what would be the 3 to 6 main points that would be in that presentation? Why don't we start, since I've already spoken with Bridget and Donna, why don't you open us up with your points? Oh, and while you do that, while we listen, think, if you will, of one nice thing that you liked about what they did, or one question like, why didn't you, what would you think of including such and such? So you've got 2 options as a listener. What would you think of including this one? Or I really appreciate that thing you said there. Okay, so we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had like 4 main points, and we wanted to start out with explaining why food is important, and how it affects us individually. We brought up the whole idea of being hangry. So, it affects our moods, our perspectives, our energy levels, and our mental and physical health. So I think we would have started with that and then moved over to our more local system on how we get our food. So Jessica did a great, sorry, it is Jessica, right? I'm not, okay, perfect. Jessica did a great, I think, point of painting the picture of how food in Arizona is made, and how there's a lot of unregulation, like no regulation on our water supply, and we're not getting the food that we make being poured back into our communities. And then, so that was our second point. And then our third point was kind of going more into how under a capitalist system, food is made for profit, and not for feeding our people, and how that leads to food insecurity for people of color, for low economic status people, and how that's just bad. And then our fourth point would have been on like what we can do to solve these issues, the resources, the education that's needed, for better farming practices, and for better distribution of our food sources to the people. And Donna, feel free to add anything to that.
No, you're good.
Thank you. Well, let's hear at least one person. What's something you noticed about their main points?
One of the things that I really appreciated was the connection of the food system and capitalism, and how food is being grown for profit, not for people.
Okay. Thank you, Paula, for a crisp, clear observation. And let's move right now. Kevin, I think you were with, I forget who you were with.
I was with Jessica.
Okay.
I sort of went on a rant to start off our session. I think I was trying to look at, is there a way to bring diverse groups together to work on this collaboratively, and how do we facilitate? How do we make sure the cities at the table, private sector, nonprofits, neighborhoods, communities, things like that. But the whole question was, how do we formulate something that we can move forward on? Because, we don't have a lot of time to work on this, frankly. I think you can make a good case that we're screwed, but nonetheless, and so I was thinking about maybe pushing this into as a major part. Food resiliency is a major part of the climate action plan that the city wants to develop, because there's some funding and support for doing something. Now, I think Jessica raised a good point. That's kind of a top-down sort of thing. It's going to be some challenges to get a wide variety of stakeholders together. She thought, and I agree with it, maybe we try to focus and try to bring together indigenous communities and marginalized communities to facilitate some discussion and interaction, and see if there's a way to get people to kind of work together, come up with some projects, plans, and implement maybe pilots, whatever you want to call it. But the focus would be more, I think it follows what Jessica was mentioning earlier, was to sort of focus our efforts in areas where we have some real opportunity. And that would be the indigenous and marginalized communities in the area.
Wow. Well, let's hear someone's comment on those as main points of a presentation.
I like how they took food to high priority. But it really is for Tucson, all surrounding areas. It's a very high priority.
Hmm.
So I agree with you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Up the notch, yeah, water, but it's everything. It's water and nature and everything.
Nice. Thank you, Christy, for that affirmation. Okay, let's see. Trace, Paula, and was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marta. Okay, so who's going to share those?
You want to do it, Marta, or should I?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Well, it turned out that we had two quite different but very compatible approaches to the thing and the issue. So the first thing would be to give a context of Arizona's food system and what it's like, our importance to the nation, and how much water it uses in Arizona. Second point is impacts on the people who are here, the food deserts, the emotional impact of food insecurity, and other effects on people. Third would the instability of our current food system. Fourth is we have the water to do whatever we want locally here in Tucson. And then the fifth thing was we can support local food systems that make us healthy and the food tastes good.
Wowzy. Okay, comments?
I like how you guys included the final part on making healthy food, like teaching people how to make healthy food taste really good. I think that's such a big motivation source when it comes to learning more about how you get your food and what you eat.
Super. So that leaves Richard and Christine.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself, but I remembered my one comment I wanted to make earlier, and it's when you spoke, Bridget. Wichita City has a community garden. It's all volunteer run. They did get a big grant, but they totally give their food away to the people of Wichita City. It's very centrally located. It's right by the library. They get soldiers working from Fort Huachuca. It's an amazing second community garden that we have in this area. Anyway, back to our topic. Such an important topic, Jessica, food and farming, and how it pertains to everything else we've been talking about with water and sustainability. We were both surprised to learn about being hangry. I don't know, I never thought of it before, but I'm a real crab when I'm hungry, and Richard is too. But then we also get into like a cycle of, what do I want to eat? I'm hungry, I need something, I want it to be healthy. Richard still craves junk food. He didn't say burgers, fries, and yet I feel ill after I eat that. I mean, especially the fries, I just have to drink water and water and water. It's like, you just want to get rid of it. But we loved all the facts that we learned today about us being so high in leafy vegetables, and how do we get food to people that need it? That was a very important topic. We want people not to be hungry. And once again, I think that's about it, but we agree it's a high priority topic.
Jessica, you were going to say.
Yeah, I will say that I appreciate hearing that the bringing up hangry spoke to you, and that you're thinking about how that might affect people who are food insecure or hangry all the time. And I'm going to just also add in chat here that one of the links to the study is about prisoners who had supplements of different multivitamins. Yeah, just thinking how maybe part of the reason we don't have good public discourse is because half the folks are hungry. But I appreciate your take on that.
Right. And also I would put in a pitch for sleep deprivation as another huge impact, especially for those who are political leaders, that they take pride in, so I work 70 hours a week, that kind of thing, when actually they're wasting probably most of that time, if I may be allowed to give an evaluation.
I have one other point too. Did you see Brad Lancaster's special on Arizona Illustrated? Just aired last week. Will be on all, I think, through Sunday on water. But he also, grows his food, and he says Arizona or Tucson perhaps could just get by on rainwater if we knew what we were doing. Did anybody see it yet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, wasn't it?
That was good.
Thank you for that tip, and thank you, Jessica, for all the resources you've done. Please know that we really would like to see at least the last two Jamboards. If you're going to be collating those for yourself, if you could kindly send your collation to me, I'd be grateful.
Sure. I'm also going to put in my email in case anybody wants to contact me about helping with the talks on food waste and the indigenous agriculture. And then somebody mentioned maybe wanting to get involved with the community gardens.
Yes, there are so many good ideas that people have brought up. I hope that at least one of them will get a champion among us, or we'll find someone to become that champion. It's being in the ambassadors. It's easy to get quickly engaged with a project, and I know some of us are already as fully engaged as we can be. Speaking, I know for Kevin, who's leading the Zero Waste group quite handily. So we're not going to ask Kevin to do anything more than he is, but hopefully, Kevin, if someone had a question, they might turn to you for, a read on something or a little direction.
Also, one more thing.
Yes, Christine.
Jessica's a master naturalist, and I don't know if you're aware, maybe you were trained by the same group. They're starting a program in Bisbee in coordination with the Bisbee Science Lab. It starts in August. And it's partnership with someone else. I was just trying to look at and see, but I'm not sure how it's going. I know we were promoting it. Let's see, here it is. It's with the Cochise County Borderlands Master Naturalist Program. So, they'd like a good amount of people, but it's quite a time commitment. Just like this program, it runs from August, quite a few months, and sort of cost prohibitive for me to drive over to Bisbee all the time, but hopefully it'll go well.
Thank you, Christy. And it's just great to know what you're doing. And I hope there's a way that we'll be able to continue beyond here with collaborating with you. So, Jessica, here is a formal thank you for opening up a conversation and sharing both your knowledge, but also your interest, and drawing us out and getting us to think about what we might do more on behalf of this topic, which is ultimately what being an ambassador is about. We're going to do our little feedback, as we always do, in the chat. So I'll put the questions in again just to remind people.
For having me. Oh, you're going to record again. Okay. And one of the things that I didn't get to that's also really, I feel important, and Kevin and I talked about this, is seeking out Indigenous and BIPOC leadership whenever possible. This land has been farmed for thousands of years, and the Thana'atham are still farming this land and having they literally just had a free harvest for their community of corn because they're able to grow so much corn with their methods. So they really teach us how to how to garden here and how to be good stewards of the land. And I feel like for me personally, one of the biggest answers to a lot of the problems that we're facing is to seek out leadership of the folks who have been stewards of this land. Just wanted to add that in there.
If you find someone or someones who can do that, please let us know. It's more challenging than it sounds. There's a certain reticence I've experienced among many Indigenous descendants who just figure, we just want to do our thing right now is kind of the message I feel. That's not completely true, but it's an area we could use some support on. So if there's someone or some group that you meet who'd like to become more engaged and teaching to us, we'd love to know that.
I could recommend reaching out to Mission Garden. I know they have a lot of folks they work with and they give classes. Also, you could get Penalise Strauss back. I mean, she did that talk for us and it was fantastic. And she's an amazing woman. So I would, those might be my two suggestions. I've experienced the similar thing, but I'm going to just keep trying. So I'll let you know if I come up with any more connections.
Thank you. Christy?
Yeah, we did some milling at Mission Gardens, and then we did a follow-up with the Tohono O'odham. Last November, they were going to go a whole month with eating only local foods. Did you hear about that? It's through the Mission Gardens, but we milled a whole bunch of mesquite for them, and then they were going to have their weeds and a total. I don't know how many people. The one young man that we milled with, Ruben, was active with Mission Gardens, but I'm curious how it went for them. Were they able to eat totally a native diet for the whole month? And that was just November last year. So it's a challenge. I mean, could I do it? I don't know.
I heard about that also. I'd be interested to hear how it went. I do know that Mission Gardens is currently doing, I think it's second or third Saturdays, they do Indigenous agricultural classes at their location. And so I do intend on going to some of those. So that might be a good place to start.
I need to get up there again when we're not working like in the winter.
On this issue, I'd like to make the comment that while we should be grateful and thankful and respectful of anything the people whose ancestors lived here are willing to offer, the difference between supporting 1 million people in the middle of the desert and supporting a few tens of thousands are probably dramatically different.
I agree, but I think it's more the mentality of how do we treat the land and each other that I'm looking for in that leadership, not this extractive method, but more the land as a healer and a teacher and a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Ethics are definitely superior.
Yes.
I just want to throw something out there, but I don't know if it's maybe too overlapping with Christie's and Bridget's, but I think I would also be interested in exploring Indigenous agriculture here and then tying that into edible landscaping, if possible, right? And talking about that bridge. But I don't know if that's too close of an overlap to what you guys are doing. But yeah, go Jessica.
It's actually, I had that in my last talk and I wanted to bring it up. I just put in the chat. There is Garrett Nabhan is doing with the U of A, the study on arid American foods, for a drier climate. And it's looking at our native plants as a way to combat desertification across, because these plants know how to live in this really intense environment. And so I shared it, and on there is a list of, I think, 15 plants that they identified that you can use for food and that have been traditionally used here for food. So yeah, I'm all on board with that. I'd love to see more green spaces with these native plants and education for folks on how to eat them.
Yeah, and landscaping and unused areas that is native. We have so many homeless populations too. If they could be munching for free, all the better, Yeah, so.
Great thought. Now, we're at noon, so we are formally adjourned. There's a couple of folks yet who, if you can bear to put a couple of thoughts in the chat, that's really nice for Jessica to get your feedback. So it looks like a couple are still working on that. So we will hold the conversation room open, and we will not mind if someone once they've given their feedback, just gently floats, walks, or even levitates away, however you would like to depart today.